Hello developers, writers, and everyone who loves game design.
Welcome to DLC Not Included, our weekly podcast where we discuss game development, the industry, and everything in between.
We're your hosts, Steele
and Teal. Glad you could join us.
All right, so I want to give a big shout out to everyone who was with us last week. Our inaugurational journey into this.
Yeah.
This is our revival from our old podcast several years ago. And I want to give a quick notification to anyone who's watching us live. Unlike our normal stuff and our AMAs, we're not actually monitoring chat. This is a podcast where Teal and I are going to discuss a topic.
Right.
However, at a certain point near the end, we are going to open up for questions, and you want to spend your channel points to ask a question, which we will see on the big monitor. However, feel free to discuss a topic amongst yourselves while we're talking.
Yes, absolutely.
We have mods there to keep things civil, so let's kick some butt. What is our topic for today?
Okay, today's topic is the state of the AAA industry in 2021.
So this is sort of a companion to last week's, which is the state of being an indie developer.
That's right.
Quick notation, this is not going to be talking about problems with designing games in the AAA industry.
No, it's not that. It's the overall state of the industry, where it's at today, and what it could do.
Exactly. And it's not going to all be negative, although there are a lot of negative and critical points. I mean, let's be honest, 2020 was not a great year for games.
Not for anyone.
Yeah. The pandemic in general, the release of certain games that didn't go very well, people feel a little negative. So we're going to kind of dissect what's the actual state of the industry and what led us to this point.
Right.
And then we're going to talk about our thoughts on how it can be fixed.
Right, because there's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
There absolutely is. And to kind of jump in, really when you start looking at things from a helicopter overview, that 50,000-foot overview, as we like to say.
Yeah.
Consumers are not part of the problem, but they're a contributing factor because the consumers are now more educated.
Yes. And
more discerning in what they want from the game industry than ever before. They always were, hey, we want this, we want that. But there was always sort of a wall between the consumers of video games and the AAA companies.
Yes, there was, because the consumers were pretty much isolated. You had these little pockets of, this group here or this team there. And with the internet and the explosion of search engines, forums, social media, consumers have gotten together.
They have. And along with things like search engines, as Teal said, YouTube, other available tools, consumers are now more educated about what goes into game development than ever before.
Oh, absolutely. They talk back and forth to each other, and as somebody learns something, they share it, and so there's a lot of platforms today, where you as a consumer can educate yourself.
Very easily. Let's talk about, for example, YouTube. There's a wealth of information. There's so much people can learn. And you have channels like GDC.
Yes.
That actually put right out there what the industry does, how the industry does things. The Unreal channel.
Yes, I was about to say, the Unreal channel.
Yeah, they literally put out, here's how we make stuff in our engine.
Yeah, they do.
And then you have smaller channels like us, Studio Blue, and others that actually dissect the game development process. So consumers as a whole know a lot more. And there's so many indie developers out there now.
Oh, yeah.
Tons. More than there's
lots of them.
Ever been. And they're talking about their game design process.
And we have forums, too. We have forums and groups and Discord channels and
tons of them.
Yeah.
So the whole point of that is that the education of the consumer of video games has reached a point where you guys out there know exactly what goes into game creation. And you also know what goes into the culture of the AAA industry. The dreaded crunch time. Right. That horrible thing. We're all aware of it now. And now, so that curtain, that wall that was between the consumer and the AAA industry is gone.
I think a lot of that is because developers that work for AAA games have become more emboldened to share their experiences.
Yes.
When you get to the point where you feel, well, I've nothing left to lose, you go out there and you tell people
exactly
what it is that you're dealing with and what you're faced with, and you educate people. This is what it's like on the inside.
Mm-hmm. And as disasters, I say in air quotes, happen, people are coming public with them. So this continues and goes a little further into something called consumer disenfranchisement, because, and this is not just in the video game industry, this is throughout history. As people learn more about how things are done and how things should be, they take a look at their own situation and go, wait a minute, what I'm going through is wrong. Education equals understanding equals potential disenfranchisement or dissatisfaction.
Right.
So the more you learn, the more you know, and the more you go, this ain't right. So consumers, I'm sorry about the giggle, but consumers are sitting through the BS that AAA companies have been pulling for a very, very
Absolutely.
long time. And
you pull back that curtain, you see what's there. That curtain's not going back.
Nope.
It's done.
Yeah. Once you have awoken, once you have, what's the term that's used? Matrix, the red pill. Once you've taken the red pill, you cannot go back.
Right.
And I know that has some negative connotations, but it's a good analogy for the game industry. And it's beyond just the consumers, because going back to YouTube, there are influencers out there. Influencers, of course, are people who are so popular that what they say influences opinion. So
absolutely,
come up with that moniker. And then you have two of them in particular, but there's tons of them. But I'm thinking of Angry Joe. When he first got his start, he was a massive influencer into the BS of video games.
Yes, he was.
And he's still very popular and very active. And then there's also one of our favorites to watch.
Jim Sterling.
Yeah, you okay?
I have got a bad frog in my throat. I so apologize to everyone.
It's all right. Would you like some more water?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank you. What I was saying was Jim Sterling. He's one that we follow.
Yeah.
And his dissatisfaction and his rage he expresses at AAA practices and stuff, it's just what we all feel to some degree. Yeah. He's just expressing what we feel and the things that we see. And with people like Jim and Angry Joe, they also have a foot on the inside. They have contacts in there, and so they're able to take information that we might not necessarily know about and disseminate it to us.
Right, and I'm again, we're focusing right now on the negative. Trust me, there's a positive this, but that disgust, that frustration, it's almost like when you hear people like Angry Joe, Jim Sterling, and others talk, it's, do you think we're stupid?
Right, right, you know, exactly. Do you think that we're so dumb that we don't know?
Right, and it's scary. It's scary because we now, as a consumer base, with our influencers, we are very much standing up and going, guys, we know you're full of bullshit.
Yeah.
Stop your bullshit.
Please stop.
And the AAA companies are not stopping.
Yeah, they're not listening. And so that just contributes to more distrust on the consumer side.
Yeah.
And then you start having, you got it now, polarization.
Very much polarization. And then you start going to the actual problems. So let's see, we have, games that come out that don't fulfill promises. Games that are starting as one thing and then end up as another.
Right.
It grows. Yeah. Consumers nowadays trust the AAA industry less and less every single year.
Yeah.
And 2020 was kind of a breaking point with, and we'll obviously talk about this more, CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk 2020.
All that, yeah.
But prior to that, there were other games. There was Anthem and other stuff where people were just, Fallout 76.
Fallout 76.
Where the consumers were like literally staring at the AAA industry saying, we know you're full of BS. Please stop.
Yeah, please stop it.
But they didn't. But let's take away from that for a second. And let's look at another lens here. Okay? The actual state of the industry from the inside is not much better.
No, it's not. As we've learned, it's brutal.
Yeah.
It puts human capital last.
Yeah.
Absolute dead last.
And part of it is corporate greed, but we're not going to go off on a massive corporate greed. The corporations are destroying the industry.
Oh, those bad corpos.
We know that's true. We know that corporate greed is a huge issue. It's been a huge issue since time inequity.
Well, for years and years and years. Yeah.
Very long time. But let's actually dissect it a little further here. The deadlines are getting shorter.
Ooh, are they ever?
The teams are getting more and more understaffed because the projects are getting more and more ambitious and require more people, but people cost money.
Sure.
So when you shorten a deadline and keep your staff at a certain level, and your product is going to get lower and lower and lower quality. And when the product quality gets lower and the customer expectations grow, it's a natural crap storm ready to happen.
That is a disaster.
Yeah. And all of that's going to come into play a little later when we kind of talk about it formularity.
Right. But I just want to say that just looking at that, the shorter deadlines and understaffed teams, if you had nothing else but those two problems, you had still shot yourself in the foot as far as turning out a great product.
Right.
You simply can't. There's a limit to doing more with less.
There is. And let's just say that when you have those issues and you combined it with the consumer education, at this point, the AAA industry has kind of come behind the 8 ball, and they're trying to play a catch-up and regain all that trust they lost, but because of all the other issues with their deadlines getting shorter, project scope getting bigger, they can't. They're trying to play catch-up on a race.
Well, they can't do it because, as we said before, the consumers, they know what's going on.
Right.
They know that it doesn't have to be this way. And it's frustrating because we can't get the companies to bloody listen.
Exactly. So let's go from, that's the state of the industry.
Yeah.
Let's go to what actually led us here, because the seeds were actually placed back in the aughts. That's the early 2000s.
Way back then, about 20 years ago.
Yeah. We had games back then that were considered to be, quote unquote, the yearly release.
Right, I remember that.
Games were released in rapid succession and created an expectation. We often talk to our developers when we're giving our classrooms and our games and such.
Yeah.
That if you create an expectation, that expectation roots inside the person. And when that expectation is broken, it causes negative feelings, anger, distrust, etc. So the seeds were planted by these companies. We're going to name just a few. The Assassin's Creed franchise from Ubisoft.
Oh my goodness, they were releasing one a year.
The same with the WWE games from 2K.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah, new game.
Yeah, and let's see.
Every year.
FIFA and EA.
FIFA was another one. EA kept putting out these different sports games year after year after year. It's like, okay, you finish playing one man. Oh, the next one's out.
DLC not included.
Yeah.
See what I did there? But the truth is that started to create an expectation, because prior to that, there were longer release times between games, much, much longer. Like sometimes you would wait 2 or 3 years, maybe even longer. I mean, how long was it between Daggerfall and Morrowind, or Morrowind and Oblivion?
Yeah, that was a number of years.
But now people are expecting games to be quick.
Yeah.
And that created a problem, because when you pair that up with an uncontrolled release in those uncontrolled increase in those demands by the consumer, it just starts to go haywire.
Well, it feeds itself.
Yeah.
Okay, we're giving you a game every 2 years. Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, we're gonna give you a game every year. Okay, I expect a game every year. Right. You missed a year. What?
Well, and it has to be better than the last one. So
yes, it must be better. Yes.
This year's FIFA has to be better than last year's FIFA. This year's Call of Duty, they're another one that do it.
Oh,
has to be better.
Call of Duty,
Call of Duty, Black Ops, sniper shots, space guns.
Oh yeah.
Have to be better than last year's, Zombie Rage. They all have to be better and better and better and better. And that's in respect to the graphics have to be better, the animation, the sound, the immersion level, the features. So the time to get these things out in a quality product it's inversely proportional to what the customer's expecting.
Yep.
So it started in the early aughts, and it started to balloon out of control.
Yeah.
Now, let's be fair here, okay? Because while it is true that part of it is the consumer base, measuring up to... The consumer base has these extremely high standards now of what is good and what is not good.
But and what did that?
Well, that's part of the game industry's fault.
Yes, it is.
The companies themselves created a competition amongst themselves.
I'm looking at you, marketing departments.
Yeah, so
you're the ones. I'm going to get on my soapbox about this. Marketing departments were the ones that told the consumer, you can expect a better game with each release. We have all this technology. We're going to up our game. And
our game is better than our competitor's game. Even if the genres aren't the same. Our Call of Duty is better than the next Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
So they created this competition amongst themselves for your hard-earned dollars. So when you measure the fact that the standards keep rising due to the competition constantly becoming more cutthroat, along with the fact that the deadlines are shrinking and the ability to put out a quality product is shrinking, you have the recipe for a complete disaster. And yes, the pandemic did affect that because more people were home.
Yes, they were.
Who could play video games. And suddenly the game companies realized, shit, we got to put out some good stuff.
Yeah, you're no kidding.
And they didn't put out good stuff.
No.
And it got worse.
Because they again, what did they do? They said, okay, you have 9 months to get this out. Oh, and your team is 7 people.
Yeah. It's not that bad, but yes, it might as well be. It might as well be. So, also the hardware increases. Hardware's getting better and better every single year.
And that right there,
Every
they
generation.
have fed each other. The hardware and the software have enabled each other. That is a dysfunctional relationship if I've ever seen one.
Right.
Because let's talk about the console wars.
Oh, yeah.
That did a lot to fracture the game industry of PlayStation versus Xbox.
Right.
And all of a sudden, game devs had to either pick a side and lose the other side, or they had to make a game for both consoles, which, let's face it, the parameters are different. You can't code the same way for a PlayStation game as you code for an Xbox game. So now you got to have double the teams.
And right, localization, moving ports, etc. The fact that, like you said, sometimes you had to choose exclusivity. Like Metal Gear Solid 4 was originally made just for the PS3, and I think it is just PS3 with nothing else.
Yeah.
So they had to pick a side, and then you add in the extra complexity of the PC master race. PC gamers. So you have consoles that come out like the PS3, PS4, PS5. Where there's a length of time between them and a despairingly large gap between the power that they can do. And then you have the PCs that are slowly like a gradient increasing. Well, you're not going to ignore that PC market.
Absolutely not.
That's some money right there.
Yeah.
So you're going to create games that work along that gradient, but then don't work along the console line as well. Let's talk again about Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk 2077 came out for the PS4, the PS5. And the computer, the PC. And it does not work on the PS4. Not really. It
doesn't. It couldn't.
Yeah.
But my point is, getting back to my original point, is that the hardware companies started setting the expectation of our technology ramps up year after year.
Yeah.
Our R&D departments are so great, so godlike, that we can give you a epic experience with each year as our technology increases. So they feed that BS to the software developers. Software is like, oh, we better take advantage of this because people are going to have these hardware systems, and our game better measure up, or ooh, bad stuff. So they, you know what I'm saying? So it starts ramping up, and it gets exceedingly unrealistic.
It does, because now games require more people to create.
Yes.
But we're understaffed. The demand is that we release them more rapidly, but we can't without sacrificing quality. And this all forces the development team to have the smallest possible team for the largest possible product. Yeah. This obviously pushes us right into crunch with the consumers are aware of being inhuman, and we hate that, and we're raging on it. So it is literally impossible to release a game quickly with a constraint on your team size and resources that is high quality. Remember that whole diagram of, we said we would come back to this. You can have quick, cheap, or quality.
Yeah.
You get to pick two.
You pick two.
And there it is right there. So, I mean, they want all three, and it's impossible. No one can do that.
Nope.
And the game industry, the AAA industry, is trying to, because they're struggling to keep up with the demand they created.
They created it.
And they can't. And obviously you have issues, and you have failings and fallings and people losing trust.
Yeah.
But let's go and point the finger in the other direction. Because there is an element of toxic consumerism that is feeding this.
Yeah.
Okay.
unfortunately, when you have uncontrolled expectations that are just fueled by this, that, and the other, then you're going to have a raging inferno.
Right. And again, a lot of these things started feeding themselves 20 years ago, but it's still here. And consumers have been led to believe now that you should always have faster, more powerful game systems.
Oh, yeah.
Faster released, better games in general. You know, something is released, my new FIFA, my new Call of Duty, my new my new WWE game, my new Assassin's Creed comes out every year, and it better be better than what I had before. And seriously, while the AAA industry created that, the fact that this toxic consumerism exists now is part of the overall problem. Some consumers now look down upon those who have the last generation console or the older video cards. Like people who have their 3080s are looking down on the 2080s and like, why? They're both ray tracing cards.
Why do you have that, man?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you have a PS4 and you're complaining about Cyberpunk. You should have a PS5. Never mind that PS5s are impossible to get.
Right.
So unfortunately, that causes it. You know, that whole haves versus have-nots. That does happen. That is a natural consequence of a limited supply and an exponentially high demand.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So those subsets are going to blame. So those people who have the haves, who have the PS5s and the 3080s, are going to blame and make fun of the general consumer, the rest of us, for over the industry failings.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not the AAA companies that have failed. It's you didn't have the right hardware. And that's not really fair.
It's not fair.
No, the video game companies are creating too high of an expectation, so the quote-unquote haves, they all of a sudden become an elite that shouldn't even exist. And
exactly.
And it creates resentment amongst everyone else.
It's tearing the consumer side apart. Fracturing it.
It is fracturing. And unfortunately, this toxicity and entitlement, it creates that line. And that line, like you said, it fractures, but it's so stark now.
It is polarized at this point. And because of that, it's really difficult and this is in theory, of course, but for the consumer sector to band together to demand more of the AAA companies, because you've got a large subset of consumers saying, no, it's not their fault.
Yeah. And then at that point, it's you have these toxic people.
You're fighting on two fronts.
Right. They're taking the side of the industry.
Yeah.
The industry hears them and goes, okay, some of our gamers like it. So it becomes this weird like dance of everyone fighting each other.
Yep.
No one agreeing with each other. And who gets hurt is the schnook who wants to just play a damn game.
Yes.
Us people who just want to play a game. I just want to play my Final Fantasy VII Remake. I just want to enjoy my Assassin's Creed Vikings. I just want to, yes, I know I mispronounced it. I just want to play these games.
Yeah.
And instead, I'm having to put up with mountains of BS that is stopping me from sitting down and going through Night City with Johnny Silverhand. I can't, it's like,
we can't.
Who suffers? Who always suffers? The end user.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The general consumers, we call them. And unfortunately, people are now having to spend massive amounts of money to try to be in the cool club.
Yes.
And it's a big, huge mess.
Yeah.
There's one more factor.
Okay. One more factor.
And this is not a negative against them. This is a positive towards indie developers. Because all of this BS is happening, the indie developers are swooping in and taking business away from the AAA companies.
Yes, they are.
Now, full disclosure, Studio Blue has no problem with that. Because we are very pro indie developer.
We are.
However, we don't hate the AAA industry. They just need to be made aware that all that BS that we just talked about, that they're the direct cause of, is now making indie developers better and better.
Yeah, it is.
Think about games like Among Us, Deep Rock Galactic, Subnautica, Phasmophobia. They have overtaken the game consumer market on a number of levels.
Yes, they have.
Thank you, Steam, for having an easy way to distribute games. So, what is being played nowadays? What does PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, what do they play?
What do they play?
It's
usually an indie game.
It usually is. Are they playing Resident Evil Village? Of course they are.
Sure.
That game is amazing. But are they usually playing some sort of indie game? Usually them dorking around with their friends.
Yes. Most of the time, yes.
Because it's more fun.
It's
so
because
much
it's
more
fun. The games are more fun.
Which is literally the point of
And they work.
Yeah.
The games don't break down and bug out. They don't bug out every opportunity.
There's a game that comes up on our channel a lot. I forgot what it's called. I think it's it says to do with one of the gods of death. I don't remember, Charon, Hades, one of the two. And Hades. And they're talking about it all the time. And it's like, this is an indie game. These are all indie titles.
Absolutely.
So that's just awesome. And here's the thing that makes it even funnier is that you're getting bigger name talent, like actual game designers from the AAA industry, voice actors, etc. They're actually going to be they're more and more part of indie development now. They're joining up with them. And
there are a number of reasons for that. It has very little to do with money and more about the opportunity, the exposure that they get, more work.
More work.
You get more work.
And especially during the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
So you get these bigger names and they're like, yeah, okay, sure. Drop me, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000.
Right.
And I'll do a few lines for your game. But then suddenly you can slap a label that, this big name star voices your game, or a composer.
Yeah.
Music by boom. Because, the indie developers have the cash. They can drop a one block time fee. And the artist who's like, well, I need to do a work, does a work, it's the gig.
It's a gig. And the next they get paid for this gig. And, boom. The more gigs that they have, the more they get paid. So, small gigs, it adds up.
Yeah, it does. And so now all of a sudden, these indie developers can just drop this hoopla of a thing that voice actor here is in my game. This guy did the music for my game. Art by blank. And next thing you know, the AAA industry has turned themselves into their own worst enemy by creating a market where the indie developer can come in and just take over. And now the AAA industry is even more panicky.
Yeah, AAA does a SWOT analysis on themselves. They're going to see indie developers. They're going to be right there in the threat column.
Yeah.
Right there.
There it is, right there. And that's the way to fix that on their end is not to get rid of the indie developer. They're not going to.
They're not going to.
But it's to address their problems in-house.
Yes.
So that leads
They need a huge house cleaning.
They do. And that leads us into what can be done to fix it. Now, before we go into this, there is no one solution.
There can't be. Not at this point. This is what we call the Aegean stables.
Yes. Yes. And we're just going to offer some of our suggestions.
Or the Hydra.
There are so many others out there. I love you. There are so many other possible solutions out there. And hopefully you guys who are watching this live, or if you're watching this on iTunes, Spotify, maybe you can think of one. But we ourselves are going to go over the 3 that we think will definitely help the industry.
Yeah.
You want to lead off that first one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest things they can do is slow down their release schedules.
Yes.
Just slow it down. You don't have to release something every year, for heaven's sakes. Have 2 or 3 years in between. Yeah. Trust me. We'll wait.
We'll
wait for a really nice product that doesn't break down and it has all kinds of cool stuff in it.
Yeah. And thanks to early access, we've gotten used to waiting.
Yeah.
We've gotten used to, hey, okay, so this game is now in early access.
Yeah.
This developer is trustworthy because they're constantly giving out updates. You know what? Okay, so it's going to take them a year.
Sure.
Yeah, they're going to be your complainers. They're going to be people that say, we want the game out now. But most people have learned to go, hey, quality takes time.
Yes, it does.
So they need to slow down, as Teal said, and keep their staff large and well taken care of. Please, just you need, okay, if you need 50 people on your staff 50 people. Don't staff 40. Don't staff 30. Staff how many you need. Those SWOT analysis that Teal's talking about, those business analysts also can take a look at a project plan.
Yep.
And tell you how many people are needed. That's their job.
That's the job that they do.
So listen to your business analysts. Believe me, they're not there to make you spend money. They're there to make you succeed.
Yeah. And so, honestly, I think, this is just my personal opinion, but anywhere from 3 to 5 years between titles,
I would, yeah.
I think is exceedingly reasonable expectation. I would wait 3 to 5 years between, I'm just going to give an example, between Elder Scrolls 5 and 6.
Yeah.
I absolutely would, because I will feel in my heart that next title, Elder Scrolls 6, would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
It would have all the attention to quality and detail that I expect from an Elder Scrolls game.
Now, of course, LOL Bethesda, but that was an example. I know,
but it was just a hypothetical example.
Hypothetical example. I'm the same way. I would wait 3 to 5 years between titles in something I liked, if it meant that it was a higher quality. Because during those 3 to 5 years, I'll either play the hell out of that current game,
absolutely,
if it has replay value, or I'll move on to something else. But just because I've moved on to something else while I'm waiting, doesn't mean I'm not going to circle back.
Yeah.
A good example is the game that we jonesed over in 2020, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't care what I am playing. I will play a lot of everything.
Sure.
When the second installment of the FF7 Remake comes out, you better be damn sure not only am I going to go back to it, but Studio Blue is going to stream it as a critical play.
Absolutely.
Because they've earned our trust. Another thing, too, is more energy, in our opinion, needs to be focused on the late beta phase being a Q&A phase.
Yeah.
Instead of adding features or whatever it is that they do. Focus, that late beta, when we talk about the game dev cycle, Teal, we're always talking about how important late beta is.
It is exceedingly important because that's where you tie it up.
Fix the bugs.
Fix those bugs, dude.
QA the shit. In fact, since AAA companies, since you have so much money, hire a company that specifically does QA and nothing else.
Exactly.
Dump it on them. Have it work with your in-house QA department and your programmers, developers, artists, etc., 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 and spend that last time between late beta and gold bug testing and bug fixing the absolute horse poop out of your game.
That's right.
And don't stop. And lastly, and this is something that Teal and I feel very strongly about, this is one of the reasons why I stepped away from being involved with AAA studios, is stop crunch at all costs.
You're killing your people, okay? People are the ones that make your game.
Yes.
We don't have robots making games. We have people. That is your most valuable asset in a company, is your people. For crying out loud, treat your people with some dignity and respect.
Yeah.
For heaven's sakes.
Yeah, and for goodness sakes, guys, and I'm directly talking now to the AAA industry. We know what crunch is. We know that crunch is avoidable. You're not going to fool anyone by saying crunch is unavoidable. Oh, it's a small crunch. It's an easy. Oh, they volunteer for it. No, all of that is baloney.
That's baloney.
We know what you're about, so don't do it. If it means that it's another year before your game is out, the haters are going to hate, but your players are going to wait. I should be quoted on that.
That's a really good quote there, Steele. Haters going to hate, but players going to wait.
Yeah. There you go. All right, so, but let's also talk about another fix, okay? And this is to differentiate the presentation of AAA over indie. While indie games will always look good, like Sinuous Sacrifice.
Oh, wow.
Holy smokes, Hellblade is amazing. But let's just say that with the massive amount of budget and people and resources the AAA industry has, they need to make their games be the highest in Hollywood spectacle possible.
Yes, as you said, because they have the means to do so. So bloody do it. Make it look like a Hollywood blockbuster. You know, with all the bells and whistles and explosions that you could possibly have.
Watch the opening of a Call of Duty game.
Yeah.
Holy shit. The beginning of Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah.
My God. So do that, but focus on that being your shtick, is that your games are like you're playing in a Hollywood blockbuster.
Right.
You know, and then add in solid gameplay, good features, etc., etc., etc. Make it so the whole experience is not like that, not just the first 10 minutes.
Not just the first 10 minutes.
And that will be a massive differentiation, you know.
Sure.
Have every part of your game ooze its style. One of our favorite games is
Persona 5, and it does it very well. Everything
about Persona 5 oozes the style of Persona 5. So have your Call of Duty, you know, Space Laser Doom, or Assassin's Creed Marshmallows. Have those be everything about it. Be the style, from the menu system to the music to the sound you make when your cursor goes from load to save.
Every little detail of the game should support your overall style and look. And you have the capability to do that, AAA game industry. You have the tools. You
have entire departments that could just be to comb through every part of the game and make it match the style of what your game is. And that's something that most indie developers don't have the ability to do because of the massive amount of resources and time. And then here's the last part of this little point. Don't try to outdo yourself. Okay? Just be yourself. Okay? Don't try to make your game bigger, badder, better. Just be what you are.
Please. Because, we like authenticity.
We really do.
We demand authenticity.
Yes, we do.
So whatever you are, present yourself as yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Square is known for its eye candy. Okay. So it focuses on the eye candy.
Yeah.
Their stories are, Yeah. And their soundtracks, their music, some is good, some is not great. It doesn't matter. They're known for eye candy. They put their budget into it. So they're seen as,
You've attached Nobuo Uematsu, one of the greatest Japanese composers, to your Final Fantasy franchise.
Absolutely.
Use him. Use him and those who work with him, like in the FF7 remake soundtrack. And if you can't use him, use the guy who did the soundtrack for 13. That's the style. That's you guys.
Yes.
That's Square Enix. That's Final Fantasy. Just do things like that. And as you do that, people will come to, say, hey, this is identifiable as this game. We know that they're trying to be this game. They're not trying to be something else. Don't all of a sudden watch some other game and go, hey, we need to be more like that because that game is making Mads money. Like adding a battle royale to Fallout 76.
What the heck?
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
If Bethesda had been Fallout 76 more is what it envisioned, and less of trying to make everyone happy, and of course the product had quality, it would have succeeded instead of crashed and burned, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those little pieces there, all those little pieces parts, they all add into the company being who and what it is with games that it is known for.
Yeah.
If you create a new IP, that's fine. It's still identifiable as an X game. We want to see Starfield be a Bethesda game. I don't want to see it be anything else.
Right.
I don't care that it's in space. I just want to see it be this is what Bethesda does.
It's all about, it goes into brand management. This is your brand. You're known for this and this. So this and this is in all your games.
Yeah.
And this are the best high quality, high budget you can possibly do.
There you go. There you go. And our last point, which is really important, guys. When I say guys, I'm talking again to the AAA industry.
Everybody.
Keep your promises.
That is so important. I would make that, I would underline that, star that, highlight that.
Yes.
Keep your promises. If you promise a game that has, high-end graphics and this awesome story, this beautiful soundtrack and fun battles, then deliver that.
If you're promising emergent roleplay systems where a person who you attacked or a gang you blew up earlier in the game, their buddies come out at a random point as a random encounter and try to get revenge on you, if you're going to do it, then do it.
Do it.
If you make the promise, fulfill the promise.
Yeah.
Consumers, and this is people in general, because we are a very social animal that relies on the social contract.
That's right. The contract.
We value honesty super much. Like honesty and keeping your promise is huge among human beings. It has never changed. So when you are dishonest, when you break your promise, you break that social contract, and it's very hard to bring that back. And don't make promises you can't keep. If you can't keep the promise of super emergent roleplay with hyper-realistic graphics and 150 branching paths that lead to 200 endings, don't make the promise.
Please don't make the promise. Just don't.
Yeah. And if you found that you made the promise because you believed you could and then found out later that you couldn't, just come out and say it.
Just come out and say it. Say, guys, we thought we could, but due to this, we can't. We're sorry. And then have something else that's really cool that you're going to, that for sure you can bring out in the game.
Exactly. Like I think Fallout 3 originally was going to have like 30-something endings or something crazy. And then they pulled it down to 1. And I believe Todd Howard actually made an announcement prior to the release of Fallout 3, correct me if I'm wrong, that they couldn't. So it had the 1 ending. that only varied a little bit depending on who flipped the switch.
Right.
And then it went into the epilogue. So that was it. But, you know, keep that. If that happens, if you find that you can't keep a promise for whatever reason, tell people. To
be upfront about it, explain what promise you can't keep, why you can't keep it, and then what you're going to do to make up for it.
Hey, it's this thing called taking ownership.
Yeah.
Take ownership.
What a concept, huh? You're taught that in kindergarten. So
we're approaching the point where it's going to be time for you guys to give questions out. So while you're prepping them, we got a few more final pointers to make.
Yeah.
Everything, and make sure that you use the channel points. So everything that we've said sounds doom and gloom, but there is that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, there is.
This can be fixed. This can be turned around for the very reason we're in this situation. The consumer is now more educated about game development than they have ever been.
Yeah.
And because of that, we can see when a company is trying to fix it. And
we will give them the chance.
Yes.
A company is honestly trying, they're being transparent, and they show us that we're trying, guys, we're trying. Yeah, we will give them the chance.
Exactly. Let's talk once more about CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
If they had been transparent from start to finish as things led up to that debacle, that reputation that they had garnered with The Witcher 3 would still be mostly intact. Yes, there would be the haters. There'd be the people who would be pissed off and throwing fits and tossing their copies of everything CD Projekt Red made in the trash. But the majority would go, we understand.
Yeah.
It sucks. We hate it, but we understand.
Yeah.
That is super duper important.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so now it's time for us to take questions from our live audience. If you're watching, please remember to use the poll questions feature in chat. It's a channel point, and you're just going to ask the question. It costs 15 minutes.
Yeah.
50 points, which is 15 minutes of watching.
Right.
So if you're new, just hit that button, ask a question. We'll see it up on the big screen here. And we'll spend a few minutes answering questions.
We will answer your questions.
So here's one from Rack. All right, thank you, Rack, for the question. What are your thoughts on Call of Duty where multiple development teams producing games with offset, such as team developing for 2021, Team B for 2022, Team C for 2023 cycle? Okay, so if Team A is given 3 years, 2021, 2022, and 2023, then that still is difficult, but it's not as difficult. However, the games are highly, highly demanding. So if a Call of Duty game still would take longer than 3 years to develop, then it's a pain in the butt. Right. It's a problem. So again, as we are not familiar enough with the Call of Duty development cycle to fully say it, if we're understanding your question, Rack, and what you're asking is they each have 3 years and they cycle, that's better. But it could still be better. Right. Now, the development team may have it easier, but what about the marketing team? What about the people who handle things post-launch? Is Team A handling post-launch for 2021 cycle? And is Team B handling? I don't think so. More than likely, it's the same people handling post-launch, handling marketing, etc., etc., etc. So at that point, it's still very difficult on someone. Yeah. Now, let's talk about Red Dead Redemption 2 for a second. If anyone else wants to throw out a question, be sure to use the podcast questions feature. Red Dead Redemption 2 was so big, they pulled in numbers of studios and pulled them all together under one team to finish Red Dead Redemption 2. In that case, they did the right thing. The game still had crunch, it still had issues, etc., etc., etc. But they realized the scope of their project was way, way, way too big. And they pulled in and made a very large super team. So there are ways to fix it, whether it be the COD software cycle, which I hope we've gotten it right now that we've talked through it a bit, or what Rockstar did for Red Dead 2. Okay, so let's move on. Burke has a question here. Okay. Stealing this phrase from Sid Alpha, video games are a creative process, and that doesn't go well with the corporate mindset. Good quote. Seeing how AAA is normally going all corporate, and we see companies that embrace the creative side and succeed, such as
Hades and Among Us.
What would you think of a hypothetical where you could divorce the studios from the figures like EA and Android Wills? All right. So,
yeah.
All right. So hypothetically speaking, like literally hypothetically, if the creative part of a AAA industry, AAA studio, was not connected to the corporate part at all, we wouldn't be having half these problems. The developers of these games know what they take. That is their job.
They know what to do.
They know what they have to do, from the creative directors all the way down to the people who are doing the QA. They literally all know. They know exactly what it takes to make this vision into a reality. And if they were in charge, then they would be releasing the games properly. And let's talk about a studio that does that. Quadratic Dreams. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. David Cage.
Yes.
Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, Detroit Become Human. Say what you will about the games. He's the creative director. He has the vision, and he is part of every aspect of those games' creations.
Yes. Yes.
So instead of him going all corporate, he's like, hey, let's make an amazing game. And then that amazing game is released. And if you love those games,
which I do,
yeah, then you love them.
Yeah.
Because he is a part of that process, and he divorces himself from the corporate side of things enough to be a part of the creative process.
Right.
Let's talk about how that doesn't work. Our favorite guy to pick on, Bethesda.
Yeah, poor old Bethesda.
Todd Howard is not nearly a part of their creative process as he should be. He's corporate, and yes, he does act as a buffer between the Bethesda development team and the Bethesda corporate.
But he's firmly on the corporate side.
Yes, because they pay him an insane amount of money, which is fine. Hey, you got to make that paper, right? But yes, so on your hypothetical, Burke, if you could separate yourself completely, creative from corporate, where corporate had zero influence into the length of time and the amount of people, et cetera, they just wrote the checks and then collected the residuals.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That hypothetical would work fantastic. You would have the same success with the latest AAA title that you have with small games like Hades and Among Us.
Yeah.
If anyone else has any final questions, go ahead and pop them in. Remember, it's 50 channel points, which is 15 minutes of watching.
Right.
So to kind of wrap things up on our end to see if there's any final questions, Teal, do you feel positive that the game industry can change, and do you think it will? Two separate parts.
The first part, can it change? Yes, it can change. The biggest thing to do is just change their perception that the product is what drives the company.
Yes.
So let's put all of our resources into the product. What goes into the product? Well, you got technology, and you have the software, and then you have people. And as I keep saying, people are your biggest asset, your biggest resource.
They are.
So put a lot of your money and your programs, quality of life programs, work-life balance, that sort of thing. Invest in your people.
Yeah. And
then by doing all that, you're going to have a really awesome product.
Right.
And then from there, you can drive all the other departments. You know, marketing will have a much easier time because it's a great product. You know, it practically sells itself.
Right.
And accounting, just the bean counters, just count the money coming in.
There you go.
And et cetera, et cetera. It's easy to operate a company that puts most of its resources into the production of its product.
Exactly.
Okay.
But now, do you think it will happen?
I think that at this point, I'm not sure. I think that one or two companies are on the right track. I do think that CD Projekt Red can absolutely turn themselves around. They stumbled a lot on Cyberpunk. They learned that horrible mistake that corporate doesn't come before creative.
Right.
And I think they can turn themselves around. There are other companies too that I think are on the track for doing that.
Right.
You know, Ubisoft. Ubisoft used to do it right. They've been doing it wrong
for a long time.
Yeah. But I think that they're going to need a change in leadership. You know how you always hear companies, firing the CEO and half the C-suite. Yeah, they kind of need to do that. But let me tell you, once you do something drastic like that, you can turn yourself around.
Yeah.
But not everybody can. I think that some companies are just a lost cause, and that's given every bit of information we have as of right now.
Right.
I think that some companies are a lost cause.
And they're just going to either fold or, even worse, they're just going to fade into ignominy and just be known as a bad studio.
Yeah, well, maybe. I think it's going to be the IBM syndrome. They're just going to keep going and not realize their own irrelevance. I'm looking at you, EA.
Ooh, that's true. And that is actually a big thing, to say that they don't even realize their own irrelevance. At that point, they've lost, but they don't realize they've lost, and that's sad.
Yeah.
That is very sad. Okay, so we do have another question from Rack. Thank you so much for the question. What do you think about long-term funding through delays to create a successful project?
Okay.
Such as, if it determines to delay a game for a year, that could cause the company to have higher incentives to negative practices such as microtransactions. Right, okay. I think I understand that question, Rack. It is hard for a company to not put the dollar above everything else.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
It is. It goes so counterintuitive to business, it's not even funny. And, being married to a businesswoman, I understand that bottom line is important. So, having said that, if you could incentivize your team to work intelligently, not harder, intelligently, if you could incentivize the player to wait, then at that point, I think that would be better than creating this, hey, we have to get this game released this year, we don't have the money, let's throw in microtransaction, pay gates, paywalls, etc.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
So I would rather see the incentivizing go, towards the players. Let's give the players something that they can work with. Now, that requires a little more planning. But let's say, for the sake of saying, you have a game and it's going to be delayed, so instead you release a short demo that gives them a taste. Maybe they can carry their progress from their demo to the main game.
Oh, that would be a nice incentive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something to whet the player's appetite, to make them excited about your game. Because going back to our original statement, the majority of players will wait that extra year for a quality product.
Yeah.
Then, hey, it came out this year, it's full of bugs or it's full of microtransactions to make up the cost.
Yeah.
So there's always a way around the cost of a delay. In any industry, it doesn't matter what the industry is, you can offset that in a way if you plan intelligently. And most companies, to kind of go back into the critical point, they don't create a plan for delays.
Thank you. They don't. And
that's not good. It's
actually not good. It's not good business practices. You should always have a plan B.
Yeah, always have a plan B. So what happens if you're going to be a year late? What happens if you're going to be 2 years late?
Yeah.
Okay, what can you do to defray that cost and not end up being in a crap trap?
Right.
So, So hopefully that answers the question properly. It's not just as simple as do one thing. It's multiple things that you can do.
And I think to summarize, there are no quick fixes.
No.
It's harder. It takes more effort to properly plan and to strategize.
Yes.
But the payoffs are worth the time and effort.
It is the difference between the golden rule of business and the platinum rule.
Yeah.
As was taught to me by my entrepreneur professor. Basically, the golden rule is get more business and your business will grow. The platinum rule is retain your business and your business will succeed.
Yeah, retain.
It's
there are oh my gosh, there's a whole industry on customer retention.
Yeah. And you're never going to retain game consumers if your games suck.
Yep.
If your games suck, if you're known to treat your staff poorly, if you're known to treat your customers poorly,
then
you're never going to make it.
You're not going to make it.
And you have no one to blame but yourself.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we are done for questions.
Yeah, I think that's it. Okay.
This was a good topic. This was a good presentation. Apologies if it got a little rough. We are both under the weather because of the weather.
Oh, it's so cold.
But we're going to keep doing this.
Absolutely.
We would absolutely love to see you guys here next Saturday and beyond. This will go up on Wednesday. This will be up for our Patreon and Twitch subscribers. So if you are a supporter of Studio Blue, you will get to see this podcast on Wednesday.
Yeah.
If you are everyone else, it will go up live all over the place, including iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, on next Saturday around in the morning.
Sometime in the morning, Saturday morning.
Yeah. So anyway, we want to thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you much for joining us. Join us next time on DLC Not Included. And remember,
anyone can give you the key, but you have to go through the door.